Have you ever heard of one pope putting another pope on trial? The medieval papacy was, generally, the most powerful force in culture and government in Western Europe. Sometimes it was a force for good. Sometimes it was a corrupt institution full of machinations and betraying its own professed values. The Borgia papacy of Alexander VI comes to mind for many as an infamous time of debauchery and debasement for the papacy. Although the most famous, his papacy was far from the worst. In today's episode, we'll talk about an event where one pope did put another pope on trial in a most spectacular way. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Me, Myself, and I History, where weird history and strange happenings in the universe are always on the menu. My name is Seraphim. The medieval papacy is a never-ending source of fascination for historians and history buffs alike. Many novels, plays, movies, biographies, and histories have been produced focusing on one or another of the popes, their allies, and their enemies, or the institution of the papacy in and of itself. Salacious material seems to dominate the genre, but it need not be of a risque sort to give us persons of interest to look at. Sometimes the corruption was a matter of sheer politics. In the period between AD 872 and 965, that is a 93-year span, there were 24 popes. In the 8 years between 896 and 904, it averaged one per year. That's right, 1/3 of those 24 popes had an exceedingly short reign in just an 8-year period. But in the 5 years before that, just one pope ruled in Rome, Pope Formosus. Surprisingly little is known about the life of Pope Formosus. He was born sometime around AD 816, probably in Rome. Who his parents were, what sort of education he had, what his life was like before becoming a Catholic prelate is lost to the mists of time. Whether it's by circumstance or by deliberate act of his successors is likewise unknown. The first significant point in his life where we encounter Formosus in the historical record is in 864, where, at age 48, he is elevated to Cardinal Bishop of Porto in Italy by Pope Nicholas I. For some context here, Nicholas I is the first pope to assume and proclaim papal supremacy over both the ecclesiastical realm and secular rulers alike. The reason this fact is important here is to demonstrate that worldly politics had already been important in the Catholic West for some time, and that was the milieu in which Formosus found himself. Formosus must have been an able cleric and at least a nominal supporter of Nicholas, because 2 years later, in 866, Nicholas appointed him as legate, or papal ambassador, to the court of Bulgarian ruler Tsar Boris I. Boris apparently appreciated Formosus because he begged him to remain there and become Archbishop of Bulgaria. Formosus refused, explaining that canons forbidding a bishop to change his diocese or to accept more than one diocese prevented him from accepting the offer. In this, we see that Formosus was at least trying to be a loyal son of the church. In 869, Formosus undertook a mission to West Francia, and again in 872. It was in these missions that he gained the friendship and trust of Arnulf of Carinthia, whom he supported politically. The same year, he became a potential candidate for the papacy himself, although he would not be elected for some time yet. During the reign of Pope John VIII, Charles the Bald was crowned Holy Roman Emperor. On Christmas Day, 875, Charles received the imperial insignia in Rome. At some point shortly after that, Formosus fled Rome in fear of the Pope. This was probably due to John VIII supporting Charles the Bald and Formosus siding with the claims of Arnulf. The following spring, a synod was held at Santa Maria Rotonda. Formosus and some of his associates were accused of corrupting the Bulgarians so that they would not accept any other bishop from the Apostolic See so long as Formosus was alive, that he was in a conspiracy to usurp the papacy of John, and that he had abandoned his proper see of Porto and was conspiring against the salvation of the state and of Charles the Bald. He was accused of despoiling the convents of Rome on his way out. Formosus and his associates were excommunicated for these charges. It is unclear whether Formosus was present or not, but it is likely that he was somewhere in Arnulf's realms at the time. In 879, at another council held this time in Troyes in modern-day northeastern France, John confirmed the excommunications. It is possible that Formosus attended this council, and he is recorded by one source as having begged the bishops for their forgiveness, and in exchange for lifting the excommunication, he swore an oath never to return to Rome and never attempt to resume his episcopate at Porto. Another version has it that he promised never to exercise his priestly ministry again in any form. Yet another version says that Formosus did not attend, and the excommunication was confirmed by John. It is possible that John acted this way because he saw Formosus as a serious rival to his own power. This is the most likely version. No matter how one chooses to see it, Formosus was out of a job and out of the church. On 16 December 882, John VIII died. The very same day, Pope Marinus I was elected as the new pope. One of his first acts as pope was to lift the excommunication of Formosus and to fully restore him as Cardinal Bishop of Porto, which position Formosus resumed the following year. He would remain in that position, apparently without controversy or notable action, until the death of Marinus' successor, Adrian III, and his successor, Stephen V, and the latter of which was on the 14th of September 891. On 6 October 891, Formosus was unanimously elected pope. 9 years of apparent quietude ended with his accession to the papal throne. He immediately threw himself into the politics of the Holy Roman Empire. He sided with Charles the Simple against Odo of Paris. He also refused to reinstate those clergy who had been deposed in the Photian controversy in the Orthodox East under his predecessor. Formosus was known for his strong distrust of Guy III, Duke of Spoleto, King of Italy, and Holy Roman Emperor, who had been crowned by Stephen V just months before Formosus became pope. In April of 892, Guy forced Pope Formosus to crown Guy's son Lambert as co-emperor at Ravenna, guaranteeing his succession. In 893, Formosus invited Arnulf to take the throne of Italy and the imperial title for himself by the overthrow of Guy. By mid-894, Arnulf and one of his vassals controlled all of Italy north of the Po River. Guy died the following December, leaving Lambert, age 12, under his mother's regency and tutelage. In the autumn of 895, Arnulf decided to finish what he started. On 21 February 896, he victoriously entered Rome and was crowned both King of Italy and Holy Roman Emperor the next day. This no doubt infuriated Formosus' opponents. Alas, it would matter very little. On 4 April 896, just over a month after Arnulf's victory, Pope Formosus died. He was succeeded by Pope Boniface VI, whose reign lasted a mere 15 days, with some sources saying that he died of gout, and others saying he was, quote, forcibly removed, i.e. murdered to make room for Pope Stephen VI. Here's where it gets weird. Like his predecessor above, little is known of the early life of Pope Stephen VI. He is believed to be a native of Rome and the son of a priest. Although it is unclear exactly when, he was elevated to the episcopate and then made Bishop of Anagni, a diocese in the province of Rome, and thus under the direct administrative oversight of the Holy See during Formosus' pontificate. Most sources indicate that it was probably against his will. It was not for humility that he did not want to be Bishop of Anagni. It was because he was a supporter of the now deposed Emperor Lambert and his mother. I mean, what better way to keep tabs on and control over one's political opponents than to place them directly under one's own administrative control? Like the saying goes, keep your friends close and keep your enemies closer. The circumstances of Stephen's election are unclear. Again, this might be due to his successors deleting his records, the ravages of war and time, or any number of other possibilities. Little is known today about any of his pontifical acts. Besides granting a few ecclesiastical privileges to certain churches and compelling the resignation of the clergy ordained by Formosus, he is known for only one thing in his 14-month pontificate: the Cadaver Synod. The death of Arnulf signaled the end of the Carolingian claims to Italy and the throne of the Holy Roman Emperors. Lambert and his mother reasserted his place as Holy Roman Emperor, entered Rome triumphantly, and then the Synod took place. Other sources claim it was Lambert's cousin, Guy IV, who entered Rome after renouncing his claims to it and siding with his cousin. We'll get back to the culpability for the Synod even taking place in a moment. The trial was held in front of a synod of unwilling Roman clergy, and an unfortunate deacon was compelled to serve as Formosus' voice, even to the point of speaking through his rotting skull from behind in a strange showing. So what were the charges? Stephen asked the rotting corpse why he had usurped the universal Roman see in such a spirit of ambition whilst he was still alive. This echoed the complaints of John VIII, who saw him as a rival. Formosus was also accused of perjury and of exercising the office of a bishop while being a layman. Never mind that pesky restoration to office by Pope Marius I, who remains unindicted on the matter, right? One truly wonders what defense that poor deacon mounted, if any, to these charges while speaking through the back of Formosus' skull. Of course, as with any show trial or kangaroo court session, the verdict was known in advance. It seems safe to me to say that the unwilling clergy were desperate to get away from the stench of that trial, both the ethical one as well as the biological one. The verdict, as you probably guessed, was guilty on all counts. The sentence was rendered so as to strip the rotting corpse of papal vestments and revest in layman's clothing. And the thumb, forefinger, and middle finger were cut off of the right hand. These are the fingers used in the Latin form of blessing. All of his official acts, including the consecration of Stephen VI as the Bishop of Anagni, were nullified. As an aside, that would make Stephen an illegitimate pope if he wasn't a bishop, wouldn't it? Then he was reburied in a cemetery for foreigners. Later, he was exhumed again, weights tied to his burial wrappings, and he was tossed in the Tiber. A short time after that, his body washed up on the banks of the river, where some claim it was performing miracles, though no canonization has ever taken place. The furor caused by these events triggered a popular uproar in Rome. Pope Stephen was dragged out of the Lateran palace and thrown into a dungeon where he was strangled in July or August of 897, a fitting end to a pope who would do such things as this. Stephen's successor, Theodore I, held a synod, rehabilitated Formosus, and reburied him in Old St. Peter's Basilica in proper pontifical vestments. His successor, John IX, held two synods, one in Rome and the other at the papal summer residence in Ravenna. Both synods upheld the nullification of the Cadaver Synod, and Lambert was present at the Ravenna Synod. Now back to the question of culpability. The sources saying Lambert and his mother entered Rome and demanded the trial have one problem. At the Synod in Ravenna, the verdicts of the Cadaver Synod were held to be nullified. Lambert is on record as supporting the nullification. How would a sitting pope bring up this issue without directly pointing to the culpability of the Holy Roman Emperor and his regent mother sitting nearby if he had been guilty? That would have been to put his own life in jeopardy. That leaves us two possibilities. First, it was Stephen being hyper-partisan and seeking revenge, or second, that Guy IV was the one who entered Rome and sought revenge for Formosus' support of Arnulf against his cousin. We really don't know who decided on the trial. Either of these possibilities is as good as the other, barring further evidence coming to light. That said, it ended badly for Stephen, no matter how you slice and dice it. The papacy, and the high medieval papacy in particular, has always attracted historians and those inclined toward politics and social gossip stories. There's simply a lot of it to be had. This one, however, is arguably one of the worst. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit that like and subscribe button and hit the notification bell to be alerted to more great content from this channel. Then go tell your family and friends who like weird history and strange happenings about us. Add your comments below if you have more to add to this story or just want to express your thoughts on the topic. Until next time, my friends, this is Seraphim with Me, Myself, and I History signing off.